done different series in the 23rd Psalm. And TJ, you did give me the thumbs up, right? All right. Riverside Baptist Church, Kenley, North Carolina, on a Wednesday night. The first day of October. And it's hard to believe in some ways. This year is slipping on by. And so, anyway, it's the time of year, the fall, change. And I don't know about you, but I think tomorrow morning is supposed to be a little cooler. And so I found my jacket and got it ready to go. And I think it'll feel good in the morning to me with that. But uh, I've done different series on the 23rd Psalm. And I remember doing one, and a lady in the church, her name is Lucille Taylor. She was a tremendous asset to the church, and she would have been to any church with that. She was a very godly lady, and I started this series, and I said, now listen, anybody wants to quote it, I'll give you an opportunity, and you just tell me when you're ready. And so after several weeks of going over it, one Sunday morning, she looked at me and she said, I'm ready. I said, okay. You ready for what? She said, I want to quote the 23rd Psalm. You got to understand, this lady was, I'm guessing, somewhere between 80 and 85 at the time. She stood up that Sunday morning and quoted the 23rd Psalm. She did it with expression and animation, and you could just tell when she did it. And it just really excited the church. And I do believe the Bible is very clear when it says His word will not return void. And I've always used my Bible, but His word is not just on these pages. His word is to be hid in our heart that I might not sin against thee. His word can be on gospel tracts. His word can be on a plaque in a building. His word, His word. And I will say this, that my generation has not, for the most part, embraced technology. And I've seen those that have it on their phone, and I have it on my phone. You know, I can pull it up, that kind of thing. And I'm glad His word is true. It's not my place to dictate where it's at, other than what the Bible says. It's to be hid in our heart with that. And so the 23rd Psalm, many of you know it by memory, and I would encourage you maybe to challenge you that if you want to quote it one day, one service, let me know. You have to get ready for it or whatever you got to do, but you'd be surprised you can learn it. All you got to do is keep reading it over and over and over and over and over. And most people know it anyway, they just don't have the confidence to do it with that. But the 23rd Psalm, you follow along tonight as I read, and then we'll go forward from that. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for His name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for Thou art with me. Thy rod and Thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. May God bless the reading of His word. In this series, we've gone over the rights and responsibilities of the shepherd and the sheep. We talked about that last phrase, I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. The reason that Ken Bartholomew is going to dwell in the house of the Lord forever is because the Lord is my shepherd. And by the way, that is the only way anyone will ever dwell in the house of the Lord forever, is that Jesus Christ will be your shepherd. That speaks of salvation, very clear concerning it. Tonight we're going to focus on something. In Psalm 23:2 it says, He maketh me to lie down in green pastures, and He leadeth me beside the still waters. We're going to talk about green pastures and still waters. Lie down in green pastures, He leadeth me beside the still waters. The green pastures speak of a food supply. The area we live in is certain times of year, some things are more greener than others. Summertime, you see the yard's green, the grass is green unless it's really dry. This past year, we had a extended period of time where the grass stayed green. But when the fall comes, you start seeing the leaves on the trees change colors, and you start seeing a little brown here and there, and you start seeing different fields start drying down, the corn crops and the soybean crops. You start seeing that aspect of things, and you see things go from a bright green down to a lighter color, and it starts going downhill in color from that. But the green pastures, we also live in an area that has some livestock, but the rolling hills and the green pastures is just a picture in my mind, and they always stand out to me to being so pretty with that. But green pastures, and that's a food supply. The still waters, that's the water source. Here we find that God provides the food and water, and it's not some dry, dusty pasture. It's green with that. And by the way, green is a soothing color according to those experts in dealing with psychology and all this stuff. And you know, I like the color green. As a matter of fact, green is a word that I can actually say in Spanish. It's verde. You know, I don't know if I pronounce it right, but that's what I say, and that gets me by with that. But green. And some people associate the color green with money. Could you imagine that? The green pastures. Not just any pasture, but it's identified the condition of the pasture. The green pastures. But notice what it says. It doesn't say He maketh me eat of the green pasture. He maketh me to lie down in the green pastures. Now you take a sheep is white and put it with a green pasture, it stands out. You could spot it like that. That's one aspect of it. But the other aspect is this. When a cow lays down, what does that mean? Anybody know? He's full. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He takes them there, turns them loose, says, here it is. You got to eat it if you want it. You follow what I'm saying? It doesn't make you eat, but He'll put enough good food in front of you to make you full. And when you get full, you lie down. Now, I want to talk about good food tonight. I know it's a Baptist church, and everybody's like, yeah, this is good, this is good. What is your favorite food? Fried chicken is one. Meatloaf, that's one. Huh? Turkey and dressing. Chicken pastry. Fried pork chops. A Carolina Packer hot dog. Corned beef. Okay. Cornbread. That's mighty good right there. That's mighty good. And take that piece of cornbread when it's hot and dip it in something like sopping it. We're getting ready to go home. the I can't say that in church. Here it is, a Baptist church, and talking about pot liquor. Pot liquor's the skimmings off the top. I know what it is. It's good. What'd you say? You can't put enough pot liquor on collards to make them good. I done tried. All right, good food, you identify with it. Everybody's got their preference. But how many of you can cook good food? And I'm not trying to put anybody down, but when you think of your cooking, compare it to a generation before you. Well, I can tell you right now, it's not good if you don't cook. But when you cook it, it's good. And Charlotte would always say, she had things she cooked. She was good cooking her own way with that, but she liked my cooking. I liked my cooking. But I didn't think I was a good cook. But I'll tell you how I got to be a cook. And that was when I cooked it, I had to eat it. And I despise cooking today more so than I've ever have in my life. But I can cook, and if I cook it, I can eat it. But good food. Now think, somebody, you're sitting at a table, and it is the best food you could ever imagine putting in your mouth. Mike's Farm down here. They have like a country place. Some of you been there, and they do a special thing at Christmas, and we'd always take a group down and sit down, and it was kind of like family style. They bring whatever you want. The first thing they bring out is these little galvanized tubs about yay high with a napkin, and inside that is a ham biscuits, and they bring molasses. And you take that ham biscuit and drag through that molasses, it is good. It's real good, as a matter of fact. And after you done about filled up on the ham biscuit, then they start bringing the good food. All the tea and drinks you want and all that kind of stuff. And then it's the fried chicken and the butter beans and the peas and the cornbread and the corn on the cob, and the list just keeps going on and on. Listen, by the time you get through eating them ham biscuits, you're already full. But you just keep eating, keep eating, keep eating. And then when you get full, you know what it's like to get, look, if you fill up on food, one of the best things in the world to do is sit down and go to sleep. And that might not be the best for you, but it sure does feel good. Good food, and then you see that sheep out there. I can see this big old fat sheep laying out in this green pasture, and he just looks at you and raises it. You walk by him, he look at you and grunt. Ooh. He's just so stuffed and full. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. Keep going. He leadeth me beside the still waters. Now I mentioned this, and that is with a sheep, the still waters is important. I actually looked it up. Why does a sheep not drink with moving water? I've been told all my life, sheep, still water. The moving water, they cook. So I looked it up. Now, how they came up with this information, I cannot tell you. Some say it's a safety factor. Sheep are real timid in nature. And they, according to what I read, they have a fear of moving water. It presents a hazard to them. Now, I'm going to read a couple more and then I'll tell you what I think about it. The safety factor, a drowning risk. A sheep, what are they known for is their skin, the wool, the fleece. Well, that absorbs water. And how heavy could a sheep be if he was soaking wet? They put it in as a drowning factor. With the weight pulls them down when all of their wool gets wet. But a contamination factor. According to this study, sheep perceive that still water is less likely to have bacteria. Now, my question is not all about this, but who is the smart man that figured all this out to know what a sheep sees and thinks? I don't know, but it's obvious to say that sheep prefer the still water. They've got their reasons, and you could go here and there, whatever. But God doesn't force them to drink. He leads them beside the still water. He doesn't force the sheep to eat in the green pasture, but we see where the sheep gets full, he lays down. That still water. He leads them beside the still water. Listen, whatever pasture God takes you to give you the food you need, it's good food. And whatever place he takes you to give you something to drink, it's good water. That's what I think of. God doesn't force them to drink. He doesn't force them to do this. But I will tell you, whatever food he provides, it's the best there is. And whatever water he gives, it's the best there is. Has he provided food and water for you, but you didn't like his provisions? Listen, he's provided enough food for us right here. We're talking about physical food, but if you compare it to the spiritual side, listen, doesn't he say come and drink of the water that flows? It gives living life, everlasting living life. You remember the woman at the well? Drink of this water and you'll never thirst again. There's something about this passage that deals with that sheep, and I'll say it, fat and full, laying down in a green pasture. Don't you know that sheep's happy? He might be miserable, but he sure was happy. God knows what's best concerning it. One more aspect and then we'll be done. Look at Psalm 23:4. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Walk, not run, through the valley of the shadow of death. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But walking through the valley of the shadow of death. There's two aspects to that. One, I'm walking, not scared. No fear. The other aspect is I'm walking, but I'm not running to death. And I'm going to say some things right here that some may think are a little pointed, but that's this. It's appointed unto man once to die, and after that the judgment. Somebody running to their death is not trusting the Lord. And we have a problem in our society today with people running to their death. It's not good. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And the next question is, we notice that there's a walk, not a run. We notice there's no fear with that. Why is that? Because there's comfort there. But what does the valley, we talked about the green pasture, and I'm sure as I described it, some of you thought of a place, or you thought about a pasture that was green and you could picture the sheep in it. What does the valley of the shadow of death look like? Probably hell. I don't know. A shadow must have light, and the closer you are to that light, the bigger the shadow is. The shadow of death. For everyone is different. In your mind and how you picture it. I've seen some folks that really struggled and suffered in this world. I've heard it said that when some different individuals had taken their last breath, some would say, well, at least they don't have to suffer anymore. I've heard people tell stories when someone passed away and they took their last breath, it was a smile on their face. You know, death is something that we don't like to talk about. We really don't. But we ought to be prepared for it. I don't know when it is for you, for me, or that's not my place. My place is for people to be prepared for it. How can we be prepared for it? There's a fear of death for many. The fear of death, from what I understand, comes from the fear of the unknown. We hadn't been there. No. But I can tell you this, God's made a provision for you and I not to fear it. Because He said, absent from the body is present with the Lord. We have His promise, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. We have His presence. What does it say as we conclude right here? It says, yea, though I walk through the valley of shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thy rod and thy staff. The rod that the shepherd carried had a purpose. The staff that the shepherd carried had a purpose. Do you know what the rod was for? For correction, as much as protection. But that staff, the curl on the end, that's so the shepherd could reach right over with that staff and reach around. You know, it's got that candy cane shape in on it. Reach right around his neck right there and pull him right on back. No, I won't. But I'm glad y'all thought about it. It sounded like to me y'all got the message. He just reached right around and pull them right on back. That's comfort, isn't it? That's comfort in knowing He's going to take care of it. That's comfort for us. So how can someone have comfort in death? By trusting in the Lord Jesus Christ. By believing that Jesus died on the cross, He rose from the dead. He ascended to heaven. He's seated at the right hand of God. He's making intercession for you and I. One day He's going to call us home. Yea, though I walk through, by the way, one key word in all of that. Not just walk, not just some of the things we talked about, but that word is through. That means we're going to make it to the other side. Thank you for joining us at Riverside Baptist Church, Kenly, North Carolina on a Wednesday night.